Hmm.
I'm here with Aaron Gray. He is the frontman and sole member of a musical project known as Anastatica. Did I pronounce that right?
Yep, you did.
Great. So, how are you doing, Aaron?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm doing good. I've recently graduated from university, so I have
Oh,
that to
congrats. Right on.
relish on.
Yeah, awesome.
Hmm.
That's a big accomplishment considering what's going on right now, especially.
Definitely, yeah. Which
Yeah.
brings me to how was your 2020?
Wow, it was interesting.
Hmm.
I think I mean this is where this whole project stemmed from
Oh, okay.
was I mean with the lockdown starting and there being nothing really to do,
Hmm.
I started turning to music more to like fill the time. And that's when I started creating the first couple demos, which were just kind of random tracks that I was kind of feeling out what I wanted my sound to eventually be. And then I think it was March that I made the title track, Empyrean. And
Hmm.
that's when it kind of started really picking up. And I was like, okay, I have, something that I really like here, and maybe I could actually do something with this and pursue,
Yeah,
a full
definitely.
piece. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Which brings me to the name actually.
Hmm.
How did that name come about?
So I'm I'm big into kind of like I don't know. I like to have meaning behind certain things,
Oh yeah,
and
definitely.
the name is like it's a plant. It's a genus of plant.
Hmm.
It's known as the Rose of Jericho, also known as Miriam's rose and stuff. It's basically like just this old tumbleweed that kind of just it dries up and becomes like a dead plant, but it can stay like that for years, and then you
Hmm.
can pour water on it, and it'll bloom and actually be living. Um, and in many ways, I thought it was like it's going to sound somewhat pretentious, but it was kind of representative of the current stage in my life that I was going through. I've been someone that I think a lot of people recently can probably relate to this a lot. Depression has been like a big thing that's kind of just exploded
Oh
in the
yeah.
pandemic, like mental health for everybody.
Hmm.
And I've been struggling with that since like college days. And I felt that with this like creation of the music and really getting into it was kind of like a turning point within myself to like I guess almost like a a new leaf type thing, kind of like a cliche thing to say, but like I was on a path to bettering myself and actually appreciating myself more. And the music was kind of a way of putting that out there to other people because this is the first time I've actually released something and felt like comfortable and confident enough to do so. Because I think a lot of artists deal with that is like their own self critique, but it can be especially magnified when you have your own, kind of personal mental health things going on, which are riding you and causing all sorts of problems that don't need to be there. And, yeah, so.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think I can relate to that.
Mhm.
I struggled through depression for most of my high school and college years.
Yeah,
I'm glad to say that I'm doing better now. And
awesome, man.
although I did take a really big hit during the lockdown, the
Oh,
pandemic.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah, due
I
to
think
the
everybody did.
absence of meaningful connections.
Yeah, and yeah, just things like, for me, working out was a big one. And
Hmm.
like, oh man, the gyms have been off and on closed um, for a while now. So yeah, it's kind of you can't really get that outlet, which was really helpful for kind of depression is a management of your emotions and also your like hormones and stuff. So getting it out through exercise was a massive way of handling it. And also I had a really good friend in the trainer I had. So yeah, the connection with people, man, it's been
That's
tough.
good.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen my friend group in I think 2 years now since
Okay.
the wedding which my buddy had, which was just before where everything kind of kicked off, like November 2019.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. So as an aside, so you're
Mhm.
tuning in from London, Ontario, correct?
Yeah, I am. Yep.
Yeah. So I have a friend who lives there, and also it's a hometown of one Justin Bieber. So
Yeah, yeah.
how do you feel about that?
Well, at least it's on the map for something. Whether or not, people's opinion of him is what it is. I mean, musically, the dude is killed it. I mean, you can't knock someone for coming from just doing kind of the same thing I'm doing, just putting myself out there. He was doing it out on like YouTube with his
Oh yeah, yeah.
it's kind of like covers or whatever, and then he just blew up. And like,
Hmm.
you can't knock a guy for that. His behavior outside of that is kind of, that's up to people's value judgments and stuff. But yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, he's a great musician in that sense, and I think yeah, another great Canadian artist. So
Yeah, I believe the filmmaker John Waters. I don't know if you've heard of him.
mm-mm,
He's made a bunch of these really campy films, such as
mm-hmm,
Pink Flamingos and Female
mm-hmm.
Trouble. One of his regular cast members is this, I believe, a drag queen named Divine. So they are really transgressive films. So Waters
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
called Justin Bieber a mix between Shirley Temple and Jim Morrison. So there's that.
Interesting, interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard his latest album yet. I haven't, but
No, no, I haven't. I
some
think
people liked it.
yeah, some people, that's a good way of putting it. I think there's always going to be, especially with like pop figures, um, they seem to be really divisive nowadays, or like they just,
Mhm.
uh, they're either hated or loved. It seems more so than maybe previous eras of music. It's like
Hmm.
I don't know if people are disliking the success of certain artists based on what they're putting out or something like that. But it does seem a little bit, more that way. But I could be interpreting that wrong too.
I see. Yeah. I think the same can be attributed to one of my favorite artists, actually, Morrissey of the
Mhm,
Smiths. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. A lot of people hate him, but I find his music to be really meaningful.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a big thing that a lot of people could practice, including myself, is to separating the artist from the art,
Mhm.
and just appreciating kind of what's there without maybe attaching the value judgment of who made it all the time. There's a because if you look, another good example is Page from Led Zeppelin and his
Oh yeah.
relationship with younger
Underage girls and
women.
everything.
Yeah, I mean, his music defined, and it still
Mhm.
defines uh, guitar riffs to this day. I mean, if you don't know Zeppelin and their influence, I mean, you're probably living under a rock. But to say that he wasn't, that's kind of just humans, I guess. But yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the influence of Led Zeppelin is definitely pronounced,
Oh
especially
yeah.
in this one band, Greta Van Fleet. If you haven't
I've
heard of
definitely
them,
heard of them. The new Led Zeppelin, definitely. They're great though. I mean, they've definitely captured the sound. They're fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, I think part of their the backlash against them is how identical they are to Led Zeppelin, and they
Hmm.
sort of fall under this cliche of bringing the '60s back into this era, and
Hmm.
this whole capitulating on the nostalgia of the '60s, which
Right.
if you really look at it, it was a kind of a terrible era for
They
many
definitely had
people.
problems. Yep. Yep.
But yeah, the musicians I think in the outfit are really competent, and
Hmm.
I really wish that they would move on to a different sound instead of just being
Yeah.
a sort of like '60s tribute act.
Hmm.
But
Yeah. Yeah. They're
yeah,
very skilled. They probably could easily,
mhm,
adapt and translate their music for sure.
definitely. So the band Anastatica, it
Mm-mm.
used to be like a full-fledged band, and
No.
or oh, okay,
No, not at all.
oh,
This is kind of like, I guess this is how it started. So along with the pandemic stuff, I just needed a name for
okay,
something, and I've referred to it as like our project or a we, kind of like a collective kind of thing. In the case that I do get band members in the future, because uh, I can't play all this stuff live at the same time, so I'm gonna
oh
need
yeah,
people eventually if I want to actually do that, and I do.
hmm,
And so to keep that open and just to just say it's a band and refer to it as that, is kind of how I'm, I guess, manifesting that and also
Hmm.
kind of envisioning what it'll be. Um, but it is just right now a solo project that I just created just because I needed, a good name for something, and I wanted to actually, make it right, uh, get album artwork, and put it up on the streaming services, and like do it like a full-fledged release, like I was a, an actual touring band, like Metallica or something like that. So yeah, that's, but it's, you know eventually I'm hoping that post pandemic and everything, it'll be easier to kind of get with local musicians. But excuse me, as a result of this, I mean, I've had uh already great networking with people that are local to the scene, um so that the chances are already there. It's just a matter of, when things open up again. So that's the awesome part of it.
Okay, yeah, congrats. Yeah, I'm glad you
Thanks.
have like a stable network and all that. So I'm
Yeah.
guessing you haven't performed any of these tracks live.
No, in fact, I've never actually performed live, at
Oh.
least with guitar and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So like my kind of music career, if you could call it that, I think most Canadian kids start with the recorder in like
Oh
grade
yeah.
school. I think it was like grade 5 that I got that, and that was like my big debut. And like uh I was raised in a very Christian kind of ethical like type household. So like we went to church like 3 times a week. So that was where the performance came in. It's, I bring the recorder up and do Amazing Grace or something. And then eventually I got into like a real instrument, and I got into piano. But the same thing, I was still using it for kind of, the worship services and part of that sort of sphere of stuff. And then, I started to become a teen, and as most teens do, they rebel. And
Of
I
course.
wanted to, I wanted to play the cool, heavy guitar stuff and not the Christian piano music anymore. So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Mom, get me a guitar." So 14th birthday is when I got my guitar. It's the same one that I've been using since. Hasn't changed a bit. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, that's when like the whole thing kind of started. But I haven't ever performed with it. That's kind of the other part of this whole thing, is that I'm self-taught. I've never had a lesson formally. I don't know music theory.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know scales. Kind of whatever I play is just off by feel. So there's that aspect too, because I'm wondering if, do I have the gusto to perform on a stage and not like make mistakes, because I don't have that kind of,
Mm-hmm.
structure behind me that maybe other musicians do. So there's a little bit of a self-restraint part that's kind of held me back from doing that. But I'm hoping to, with the creation of this EP and the other music that I'm working on, and kind of the plans to make a full-fledged like band out of this, that with that kind of format, that I'll be able to just get up there and just, play the music and see what happens and just go with it.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
yeah.
Uh, I think in my childhood days, I was sort of like introduced to the piano as well by
Hmm.
my parents, and it's quite amazing because usually the piano tends to be really large, and our house is
Hmm.
not that big, so I so it was just a an electronic keyboard, a
Hmm.
Yamaha or a Casio,
Hmm.
and there's a
Those are
preset,
great.
and there's a grand piano preset on it.
Yeah.
So there's that. And I think looking back on it, I wasn't that enthusiastic about the
Hmm.
piano or playing music. Um, so, but about the, I guess, the rock and roll ability of the piano. I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, the guitar is very much, embedded or tied to
Hmm.
rock and roll, but the piano is in itself an incredibly can be used for rock and roll
Oh yeah,
purposes. You got
definitely.
your Jerry Lee Lewis and Elton John,
Hmm.
and then and the keyboard as well. You got I think one of my favorite keyboardists is Richard Wright of Pink Floyd.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's that sit line in Welcome to the Machine, which is what I would describe as orgasmic.
Definitely. Yes, I definitely agree. Like I think this is I have another buddy of mine that's a musician. He's not part of this project. He kind of just does his own thing, but it's kind of like a little joke acronym. It's called GAS. We say, "Do you have GAS?" Which is gear acquisition syndrome, which is when you get some new piece of musical equipment and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, I need 50 pieces more." Like this year I got my new electronic drum set that I've been messing with, and
Nice. Yeah.
uh, I mean, I'm already like I was looking at keyboards and pianos. I was like, maybe I should get that too, and get back into that, and bring back
Mhm.
some synth stuff, and that's still in the works. I'm still planning on that, but yeah, it's interesting how when you're younger, you don't appreciate um like the beauty of piano music. Like
Oh yeah.
there's pieces today that they make me cry. I mean, they're just so amazing. The emotion that you can make from a piano can rival, I'd say, most guitarists on a good day.
Hmm.
Um, because a lot of guitarists are really about, shredding and going fast, and that stuff's cool. But to really emote with a guitar can be very difficult. Um, like back to Pink Floyd, I think David Gilmour is probably like one of the best examples of someone who can do emotive guitar.
Oh yeah,
His
definitely.
his solo on Dogs is oh, orgasmic's a good word for it.
Oh yeah,
It's
it's incredible.
breathtakingly, yeah. It's insane. It's something that you aspire to do. It makes you almost want to put down the guitar and burn it sometimes just when you hear it because you're like, how do you even get to such a point? It's
Hmm.
so great, but yeah, it's inspirational to have that. So yeah, like I'd love to bring piano and keyboard back. It's definitely in the mix, part of the works. Yep.
All right. Yeah,
Yeah.
so I listened to the entire extended play, by the way, and
Hmm.
I thought it was incredible. I really
Thank
liked
you.
it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's entirely instrumental, and of
Hmm.
course, it reminds me of a bunch of a lot of these prog rock, post rock outlets that I was really into, especially Explosions in the Sky, if you've heard of them.
Hmm. Yes, I have. Yeah.
And I was struck by obviously the names of the names really interest me. One of
Hmm.
them being the title Empyrean, which
Hmm.
there's an album by John Frusciante that bears
Hmm.
the same name.
Oh,
I
really?
Yeah, I know that the Red Hot Chili Peppers aren't really the best, but John Frusciante, he's like incredible.
Yeah.
He's an incredibly experimental and virtuosic guitarist and artist, and
Hmm.
I've heard certain songs of that album. The
Hmm.
Empyrean is what it's
Hmm.
called, and it is incredibly moving as well. You should really listen to it.
I will definitely have to. I can't believe I didn't come across it when looking up the name for this. That's
Hmm.
actually funny because originally the name for the title track and kind of was what kind of made the concept of like the floating through space and kind of
Hmm.
psychedelic vibe to it was Where Soars the Cosmic Surfer. It's a bit longer, but also it had the Joe Satriani kind of Silver
Hmm.
Surfer kind of
Right.
deal with it. And I didn't want to step too much on his toes with that. And if I had have known that someone else had picked Empyrean, maybe I would have switched it. But I'm actually really happy with it. I think um,
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad.
it
And
fits.
the artwork also intrigued me as well.
Mhm.
So, can you tell us about the origin of that?
Yeah, that's a painting from like 1800s ish, by a guy named Gustave Doré.
Oh yeah, I
Uh,
know him.
yeah, he made the artwork. I think this is part of like one of Dante's Inferno kind of.
Yeah.
It's part of a collection of that. It's just
Hmm.
depicting what is Empyrean, which is the highest heaven,
Oh,
the heavenly sphere in the ancient and medieval cosmologies. That's like just a mix of fire and light. Um, kind of like I guess what you would refer to as like heaven, and
hmm,
like the Christian heaven is kind of a version
right.
of it. So yeah, it was just like the two figures looking into like this middle spiral of like angels and sunlight was kind of the inspired feeling of like just listening to it front to back and kind of just closing your eyes and just going through this kind of space-like floaty journey
Hmm.
was the intention. So that's kind of why the artwork was picked for that
Gotcha.
purpose.
Yeah, I'm familiar with Dory's work
Hmm.
in Milton's Paradise Lost, where
Hmm.
he did some of the illustration as well, and also the
Hmm.
poetry is just magnificent.
Yeah, and if I think that was actually the inspiration for. Have you heard of Symphony X? They're
No, please enlighten me.
they're a great like prog rock style band,
Hmm.
symphonic. Like they use a lot of orchestration. They did a whole album called, I think it was called Paradise Lost, or at least one of
Oh,
the
okay.
tracks off of
Huh.
it is that, and it's referred to that.
Hmm.
Um, they also have, and these guys are kind of another inspiration in the sense that they just craft such amazingly epic, long orchestrated pieces. They do the entire story of Odysseus over 24 minutes. That's
Okay. Wow.
impeccable, not a note
Hmm.
out of place, and just like it's another thing that just makes that's another kind of on the mantle thing that you're shooting for to try to hit with that sort of thing. They're great. So yeah.
So, what's the decision behind making the entire album instrumental?
Yes, I'm too scared to put out my my own voice and
Okay.
do vocals. That's basically what it rolls down to.
Hmm.
Part of the kind of like post release process was sending it to like it's a couple really good tools for like starting musicians to like get feedback on their music and kind of see where it is. And one of them was like this crowd review service by Reverb Nation. For anybody out there that's doing this and wants to check that out, it's very helpful. Um, and a lot of people were like, "This would be great with vocals." So uh, part of I think the since the music is also a representation of my own kind of self process and building, I think the next album, which I'm working toward like a full length one, um, will feature vocals, my own, hopefully,
Okay.
if I don't sound completely terrible, because I have never actually tried. That's part of kind of getting over it. But I think um, that's kind of it's important to do so. It will develop the music further. It'll develop myself further, and the two are so intricately tied together that it's going to happen regardless. So um, yeah, it's something
Yeah.
to look forward to. Yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I do look forward to that.
yeah.
And I think you can use vocals in, say, post rock music in
Mhm.
really creative ways. Like, I know of that Icelandic band, Sigur Rós. I hope that I pronounced that name right, where the lead singer, Jónsi, he,
Mhm.
he sings in these beautiful Icelandic, vocal passages. And you know, um, I don't really speak Icelandic, and I'm not sure if you do, but it's
No.
beautiful regardless of whether
Yeah.
you know Icelandic or not.
Mhm.
And there are times when he there are times when he goes into this really like a made up language,
Mhm.
and it's all beautiful nonetheless.
Yeah, that's true. Um, that's actually a really good point, and something that I should probably take into mind is as part of this whole kind of self building process is expectation management. That's a big thing with music.
Mhm.
It's like uh, I think there was a period of almost 2 months where I was mixing the last, like with my audio engineer, trying to mix the last track on the album, and just was being such a perfectionist about it, and it just was not settling the way I wanted to.
Mhm.
And that was a practice of just managing the expectation that this is going to sound as good as it's going to get, and there's always more. Like, you can always improve this on the next album, get
Mhm.
better equipment, do better things. And I think where it ended up was quite good. For what it started was it was a muddy mess, but
Mhm.
uh stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be singing like Adele or someone like that, although it'd be
No, that's
nice.
fine.
But no, that's fine. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that's a really good point. I'll have to
Mhm.
consider that.
Yeah, and I'm I'm one of those people who thinks that the kind of having a good vocal range or great vocal range
Mm,
is kind of an overrated quality because some of my favorite singer-songwriters are the ones whose voice would not make it in, say, the inner rounds of
mm,
American Idol or The
mm-hmm.
Voice or whatnot. People like Dylan or Tom Waits or Lou
True.
Reed.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
True.
Tom Waits is a spectacular, distinctive example because his voice sounds different in every album,
Yeah,
and you wouldn't characterize it as good vocal range in any way.
that's true.
Hmm.
Even Yoko Ono had a small
Oh yeah.
vocal career, so
Hmm.
that's a good point.
Hmm.
Yeah, if even she can do it, it's true.
Definitely.
And she just yelled into the dang mic half the time.
Yeah, that's what makes it so like special. I say.
It's true. That's true. Yeah, made her very unique.
Hmm. So so despite the album being
Mhm,
instrumental, and you said that you've had you're going to provide lyrics in the next one.
mhm,
Uh, who would be your lyrical inspirations? Who would be your favorite lyricists? They not necessarily need to be musical. I mean, you can
mhm.
take it from any form of written word you like.
Okay, perfect. Well, I definitely would say in terms of just off the top of my head, like just general, Robert Frost. I've always loved his
Hmm.
poems. He's got great work. Um, musically, uh, I'm a big fan of Iron Maiden because they've
Okay.
always done they've taken elements of literature, so they've also
Hmm.
somewhat like Symphony X. They had a 13-minute, 14-minute song about the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner.
Oh
That
wow.
it's fantastic,
Huh.
absolutely fantastic. Another like inspirational kind of song for me that kind of set the whole prog vibe for me. Um, Black Sabbath.
Hmm.
Um, Black Sabbath was really big for me when I was starting, like when I really got into the midst of the Big Depression. I really started to listen to them because their lyrics were they're very societal based. Like especially their latest album 13 was
Hmm.
very heavy on social critique through music, and it was at the time I was feeling a lot of those type of feelings too, and that's kind of what was manifesting that, and I was
Hmm.
very relating to like I was relating to that music incredibly, and it was very moving. And so I love um, their lyrics, and that's a mix of Ozzy and Geezer Butler. He writes some of the songs, and Tony Iommi too.
Hmm.
Um, and then a lot of grunge bands. I really love the way Alice in Chains writes their songs. They're the last concert I saw before everything locked down. I was super
Oh
lucky
wow.
to see them. Um, and, a lot of those lyrics come from a place of pain because it was Lane Staley
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So, um, but you know, they're also very beautiful in the way he portrays those types of feelings, and that sort of thing is something I aspire to have is beautiful, meaningful lyrics that people can relate to the emotional feeling of, and also that maybe potentially tell story, um, either from existing like poems and stuff like that, or just something made up. Um, is some of the like Iron Maiden again makes a lot of great kind of prog rock bands about just random stuff. Um, they made one, I think, on their most recent album. If they haven't made another one, because I haven't checked in a bit, the Book of Souls about the Enola Gay. And
Hmm.
there's like a 14-minute song because Bruce is very into flying. So, and it was fantastic. And, stuff like that. I think I think you can find inspiration for lyrics everywhere, um, especially in the natural world, which is, I think, mostly going to be the focus of the next album. I've started to write some lyrics regarding, just elements of nature that I found to be particularly interesting while
Hmm.
um, under certain conscious states. And yeah, I'm hoping that that will help people, experience the same thing that I do during, seeing that sort of thing. So,
No, yeah, definitely.
mhm,
To your point about like writing beautiful lyrics about, say, pain.
mhm,
Elliott Smith is a really good example.
mhm,
Yeah, he's he's incredible, and I think
yeah,
when I was in my less than cheery phase, I do listen
yeah,
to him,
mhm,
and even and going back earlier when I was in my what you would call rebellious youth phase, I would go for a Linkin Park.
oh yeah, definitely,
The intensity of what the lyrics as well as the vocal presentation by
mhm,
Chester is quite amazing,
yeah, definitely,
and what which is why I was sort of like I was really let down by the release of their latest album. It's called
mhm,
One More Light, where everything that made Linkin Park so novel
mhm,
and so good to some was stripped away, and
yeah,
it was replaced by these like pretty mild pop ballads that
mhm,
did not stick.
yeah. Yeah, I feel like the music as a whole lost a lot when he unfortunately passed. Like
Hmm.
he was I mean, yeah, I think Linkin Park for a lot of people defined kind of their youth and
Oh
their
yeah.
their teens and like that high school era. Like I definitely listened to some of them and yeah, I mean, he made great music and it sucks when anybody like Chris Cornell was another one that really devastated me. I
Hmm.
love Soundgarden. They're like another kind of grunge band that really influences me lyric wise. Um, yeah, yeah, definitely.
Hmm. And yeah, around the same time, I think I was maybe 14 at that time when Black Sabbath's 13 was released,
Hmm.
and that was my first introduction into their band. So
Yeah.
I was quite amazed, and I believe the album was produced by Rick Rubin,
Hmm.
whom I later come to really love because
Yeah.
he worked with like a plethora of amazing artists, Linkin Park included.
Hmm. Yeah, pretty much every band that you can think of has made like an album with him. Like all of the big like rock bands and like yeah, he's fantastic. That would be, I mean, that's a real big shoot to the moon type thing. But to make an album with him would be like, that's some life changing stuff right there, for
Oh yeah,
sure.
I think another example would be Brian Eno.
Mhm.
Aside from his incredible solo output, he's also produced some of the greatest albums in the 80s. Two examples I can think of is Remain in Light by Talking Heads
Mhm.
and The Joshua Tree by U2.
Yes, huge, huge albums. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, actually just started getting into the Talking Heads more because I've started to use them as learning to drum songs.
Oh, okay.
They've got great
Hmm.
great upbeat kind of drum lines that are really fun to play and it's a great way to get into like a flow state with drums. So yeah, I've been
Hmm.
learning to appreciate them a lot more recently too. That's awesome.
Yeah, which brings me to the next question. Who
Yeah.
would be the instrumentalist that you were inspired by when you're making this album EP?
Oh, there's so many. Um, I think probably the most recent and um, like one of the more, I guess, kind of up and coming guys. Or he might be like I mean, more people might know about him than I think. But Guthrie Govan,
Okay.
um, he made his album. I think it's called Erotic Cakes.
Hmm.
um, is absolutely fantastic. It's his first, yeah, it's his first studio album. It was released in 2006 by him, and it has a mix of like I think a lot of the instrumentalists and the virtuosos really go for like the really fast shredding and like the crazy sweeping, and that stuff is like really cool and very flashy. But I also really like it when they mix really emotional stuff in, and he's like a great balance of like this weird jazz fusion that's very emotive. Also has great shred sections in it and is very technical with it, but it's just it's really well pieced together. I'd say he's like maybe a more experimental like not Joe Satriani. Um, the other good guy.
Mhm.
Not Vi either. Oh God, Santana. I
Oh,
think
right, Carlos Santana.
yeah,
Yeah, he's incredible.
yeah, I love Santana too. I think he's probably like the kind of one of like the classical three big solo virtuoso guitarists that I would most relate to. Like I love his album. I think it's the Primavera album, or at least that's the one that the song is off of. I love that album.
Right.
Um, that was I had that on repeat a lot through 2020, and that was definitely influencing um, just the general kind of sections of like uh, long, like pieced together kind of dueling guitars or stuff like that. That's yeah, all that type of stuff. So
Isn't this, is it happen to be the album Supernatural? The one
yes, that's the
also
one.
with
That's the
the
one.
smash hit Smooth with Rob Thomas?
Hmm. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
that's a great
the
album.
opening solo is just blows my mind.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a repeat listen for me. It still is. I still have it on repeat. It's great. Love that
Hmm.
album.
Yeah, and I do appreciate some of their like some of the band's like earlier works like in their Woodstockish era,
Hmm.
where in addition to the guitar, he combines like these really cool instruments that are mostly associated with Chicano music, like
Hmm.
Latin American stuff, like the conga and stuff,
Yeah,
which is yeah.
yeah. That's one of the things that I would love to somehow either through a local artist or something like that is someone that has really good techniques with like bongo drums. I love the
Hmm.
way they sound. One of the big like kind of proggy rock songs that Black Sabbath did was Planet Caravan,
Right. Okay.
and that's a really soft kind of spacey feeling. Has spacey lyrics talking about the god of Mars and
Hmm.
going through space. That's a big influence definitely for this album, and it has a great use of just bongo drums and like this soft kind of rolling drum line with
Hmm.
them. And yeah, I think uh, I think there's probably ways to make a cheese grater sound good in certain music if you have the just the wherewithal to kind of piece it together in a certain way. I'd love to experiment with all sorts of instruments and have them in the music. Yeah, it'd be great to just try whatever and see what happens. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a subgenre of music that uses chiefly, if not entirely, like samples from non-instrumental sounds that you hear, and then
It's
it
interesting. Is
yeah.
that avant-garde? Is that what that would be?
I think I would categorize it as such. I think one example I can think of is this guy, One O Tricks Point Never. It's a project of this guy Daniel Lopatin.
Mhm.
Um, do you know the do you know the movies Uncut Gems by the Safdie brothers?
I don't know.
It's a movie starring Adam Sandler, and it's
Mhm.
actually a drama where he plays this. I think he plays a jewel thief, but it's quite
Yeah.
famous. It's on Netflix.
Mhm.
The score was composed by Daniel
Oh
under the
yeah.
name One O Tricks Point Never. You may have heard about the Safdie brothers' previous film called Good Time. It
Hmm.
stars Robert Pattinson,
Hmm.
and Daniel scored that as well. The reason I mentioned his name is because one of his album, which the title really escaped me right now, is composed of chiefly, if not entirely, of 90s commercials,
Oh, that's so cool.
jingles. Yeah.
I'd definitely have to check that out. That's super cool.
Hmm. Yeah, it was. I think it was released in 2011, and
Mhm.
yeah, the name of the album should come. up later. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where you can creatively use sounds to make you know new new music. Or right, it's called replica.
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 Okay, I'll write that down and check it out. That sounds awesome. Yeah, part of the kind of a similar tangent is part of the kind of way I've been learning drums is like just finding songs that I like on Spotify and just trying to play along with them.
Oh, cool.
Um, and I've recently gotten big into like Afro funk
Hmm.
and like the like Maggot Brain and like
Right.
those old
Funkadelic.
style, yeah, and like oh man, and fantastic music, and the way they, oh, my brain just went off and just lost my train of thought. Damn, I'm sorry, I totally lost my train of thought there.
Yeah. Would it be would it happen to be related to Afrobeat? Because I know that the Nigerian artist Fela Kuti,
Mhm.
he's one of the greatest artists of the 20th century, and I think the more you read about him, the more you would like him because he made music. Uh, he made rebellious music in
Mhm.
a very very oppressive regime of Nigeria, and I think his commune would often be raided by the police, and
Oh wow.
yeah, but mm,
Oh, I remembered my thought. Okay, this is why we were talking about that. Okay, so yes, I was getting into the Afro funk music because, and I was noticing that I was stumbling across a lot of the songs that were being then sampled later for like the big hip hop hits.
right, yes,
Um,
yeah,
like oh, which one is it? "Hung Up on My Baby" by Isaac Hayes is
hmm
what was used by, I think it's the Ghetto Boys and My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me.
hmm
um, and just stumbling across kind of like little, it's almost like musical Easter eggs because like
oh yeah,
I
uh-huh.
would have never heard of Isaac Hayes or anything, and just to have it randomly come up and be like, wow, that's what that came from. And then um, it's funny how they just sample a small piece. The entire thing is an amazing 6 minute
hmm
song of just great orchestration and just like jazz and blues flow. And yeah, it's funny how like sampling has become, it's almost like an homage or like just a way to honor old music that kind of gets forgotten. And
oh
then
yeah,
like if the artist gives you, enough of kind of information on where it came from, you can look that up and kind of see the, the history and how it kind of pans to where it is. It's super cool.
hmm yeah. I think definitely sampling is one of the really genius aspect, and
Mm.
I think a bit too underrated in
Hmm.
the element of hip hop. Like nowadays, the MC or the rapper gets way more attention than the DJ or the producer.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it was sampling that sort of brought hip hop onto the map because
Hmm.
there's this song in 1979 called "Rapper's Delight" by the Sugar Hill Gang.
Hmm.
It was considered to be the first hip hop hit, and
Yeah.
it used the sample it used was the bass line of the song "Good Time" by the disco group Chic.
Hmm.
It goes bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum 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 ba-dum.
Yeah.
And then Chic actually sued the Sugar Hill Gang for
Really.
for
Oh.
royalty rights, and I think they lost, but it
Hmm.
was the first in a long line of lawsuits.
Hmm.
For faced by these hip hop people,
Yeah.
and yeah, it but
Yeah, it seems kind of weird. Like I think Weird Al was another person who like he's just making kind of music that's
mhm.
just for fun. And
Oh
like
yeah,
he's definitely encountered problems with people just like kind of feeling like he's almost trivializing or like making fun of like what they do that's serious. And in a
hmm
way, I think it's the same thing. He's sampling like an entire song almost and just like paying like this weird kind of cover tribute to it in his own way. And I think it's cool. Honestly, if I was to get a Weird Al song, that'd be like I think a badge of honor in many ways. That'd be super cool. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I do think that he himself is sort of underrated too because
Oh
of that.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. When
He's
people
great.
say who their favorite artists are, they rarely mention Mr. Yankovic, but
Yeah.
he's a regular fixture for decades.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, he was definitely part of my childhood. Yeah.
um, so so who would which artist or band
Mhm.
or even any creative personality would you say to be well? What would be an example of what you think to be an underrated artist and an
Mhm.
overrated one?
Mhm. I think underrated right now. I stumbled the same friend who's a musician that I was talking about previously in the interview. I stumbled across. He
Hmm.
sent me a link to this band, Polyphia,
Okay.
and speaking of sampling, they sample older and current hip hop songs and makes them into music with a lo-fi style.
Hmm.
But then they also have a very distinct it's a very distinct like picking kind of slap like harmonic just it's crazy guitar
Hmm.
style. It'd be very difficult to do. The lead guitarist has videos on YouTube showing like how he comes up with stuff, but it's very easy listening. It has that kind of lo-fi bedroom pop that's really grown lately.
Hmm.
Um, and I think if people check them out, they probably really dig them.
All right.
In terms of overrated, that's tough. I'd say maybe in general, I'd say maybe the kind of and this might this might make me sound elitist, I guess, but I guess you're gonna make enemies regardless of what you say here. But
Yeah.
um, I think kind of the pop right now as a whole, and kind of like
Hmm.
some of rap as a whole, is kind of just lost a lot of its flavor.
Hmm.
It kind of sucks now. Like the rap kind of seems to be less about, the older style hip hop and rap was a lot about systemic critique. And I think that's where they really made the most noise because they were kind of like bringing out a message that was,
Hmm.
um, people don't really want to hear sometimes. Like Jurassic 5 is a great hip hop group that does a lot of that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
And a lot of the rap and kind of hip hop, and I could be listening to the wrong people, seems to kind of be like that sort of mumble rap, kind of depressing, kind of
Hmm.
almost very drug subculture-ish vibe. Um, and then the pop is very, it's just manufactured. It just seems so manufactured, more so than it did with artists like even Justin Bieber. It doesn't seem like he seems to kind of be where it cuts off between an era of like organic and really manufactured with like the social media influence and stuff like that. And I think going back to like how I want the lyrics and the music to kind of be a little bit more, emotional and serious and have meaning. I think a lot of that kind of gets washed out with like these party and club hits. And it dominates kind of what we end up hearing a lot in popular culture with like, music scores and just radio stuff. And it'd be nice to bring back some, I guess, the 70s, 60s style of like, or just like the meaningful music again, I guess, more so to take the stage, I guess, would be my
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do share your opinion.
opinion.
It's very strange that even though everyone that I talk to detests pop culture in some sense,
Mhm.
it is still popular.
Yes. Yep.
So I do wonder like if anyone really is into it. And
That's a funny, yeah. What is everybody just pretending to go along with it because of
mhm.
social conformity, or is there actually a big enough? base that's supporting it while everybody is looking in and kind of picking pieces they don't like and
Hmm.
aligning themselves with other pieces. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah, and I do. I think the this weird trend of you got a pop artist, and they in the second or third verse they would feature something from a rap artist,
Yeah.
and I find that to be really weird. And there's so many of these songs floating
Hmm.
around right now that it becomes painfully generic. And
Yeah.
of course, in terms of overrated artists, I would say Drake comes to mind,
Yeah. Yep.
the
I would
Toronto-based
agree.
rapper. I don't think he's made anything that is characterized as original since 2015. So there's
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
In terms of underrated, I think many of Lou Reed's albums are really underappreciated.
Hmm.
Uh, chief among them being the collaboration album he did with Metallica called Lulu, which I
Yep.
thought was incredible. Like it's
A lot of
really
people
extreme.
put that up there with like Saint Anger. They're like, oh man, that is bad news, Metallica. That's bad news. Yeah, I didn't get it either. There were some good songs off that thing. It's like there
Mhm.
were off Saint Anger, uh, for a matter of fact, for the record, for anybody out there listening who doesn't like Saint Anger, hey, I like a couple songs off there. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I really should check that out because I haven't actually listened to that. I know that there's a documentary called Some Kind of Monster that was
Hmm.
surrounding the either the making of that album or the touring to promote that album, and
Hmm.
there was a lot of well anger within that
Yeah.
movie, as I've
Yeah.
heard.
I think that was probably during one of their more volatile times as a band,
Hmm. Yeah.
which seems to almost be a kind of speaking of kind of like generic things, that almost seems to be cookie cutter for most of the 60s, 70s, and 80s bands is just constant breakups and weird drama. But the music they made out of it was absolutely insane. So can you really critique that sort of process? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's a natural process because
Yeah.
you got these really creative guys,
Hmm.
and they oftentimes their visions do not
Yeah, that's true.
intersect, and it was really geniusly parodied in that movie This Is Spinal Tap.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right, I think the basis described one of the guys is like intense fire, and the other guy is ice, and I'm just in the middle. I'm lukewarm water, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, I could see that definitely
Mhm.
being the dynamic with a lot of things. I think that'll be something kind of to possibly prepare for when I start kind of trying to flesh out the band aspect of Anastatica fully. Will be like managing that sort of thing. Um, but I think as long as people are honest with each other and open about what you're trying to do with music, I think at the end of the day it'll come together. So
Yeah, and also preferably drug free.
yes, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so we're almost at the end of our time here. So, Aaron Gray from London, Ontario, what would you like to say to close off the show?
Oh, well, I'd like to say thank you for having me on. This is my first ever kind of interview for the music and stuff like that. So this was super exciting to do. I
Mhm.
really appreciate it. Um, for anybody out there who likes prog rock, post rock, psychedelic rock stuff, be sure to check out Anastatica. Um, we're out on pretty much every streaming service and YouTube and all that type of stuff. I also Twitch stream a couple times a week, either
Oh,
playing
cool.
video games or just kind of messing around with music production and kind of like sneak peek previews on practice sessions and maybe some of the tracks that might be coming up on the new album, which I'm hoping will be probably out uh 2022 at some point. So there's that. I don't have a name for it yet, but that's kind of what's coming up in
Gotcha.
that
Yeah,
sort of thing.
I
Yeah.
I would count myself among the people who are into post rock and prog rock and anything
Hmm.
experimental. So yeah, there's a
Right
soft
on.
spot for me for the kinds of music that you make.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think that's been kind of the biggest learning experience from this is that having, being comfortable and confident enough to put out music like this, there's going to be always an audience for
Hmm.
something that you've created. And it's been surprising how positive the reaction is. It's kind of, it's taken me by surprise a little bit, but
Hmm.
I really appreciate that. That's very nice. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Take care, man.
Take care. See ya.